Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.
And good evening. We managed to make it work this week. I think everyone that is in the chat was here for last week's technical debacle. All right. So, for all of those who were looking to, see what peach on a pizza was like, unfortunately, the pizza place got our order wrong, and I got what I think is vegan cheese. It's the first pizza I've ever gotten from there that was really terrible. Well, I shouldn't say that. It's not really terrible, but it's rather like eating cardboard. So, my guess, we're going to go around. Everyone, if you can do a little introduction, and then we're going to, as you do your introduction, we want to talk about the weirdest thing you've ever had on a pizza that you actually enjoyed. That was tonight's question, which is why I was going to do peaches. So, Andrew,
Which Andrew?
the one who's actually going by Andrew.
Okay.
That would be you.
I thought we were starting with Barlow Keep. Sorry.
Oh, that's for the game introductions. This is just
Okay.
I'm just gonna go clockwise for the intros.
Okay. My name is Andrew. I'm with Lords of Gallipay Games. We are a game design and add-on company with our own tabletop RPG and a whole host of other products. Um, and the weirdest thing I've ever had on pizza, because I never ventured into the weird, was just pineapple. And I didn't like it, but that's the weirdest thing I've had on pizza. And everything else has been extremely normal. So I don't really have a good answer.
This is let me tell you, the pineapple on pizza thing is already a hot button topic in the chat members of this group.
I'm
uh,
sure it's always a hot button topic.
yeah, it's interesting that pineapple specifically. I don't know if you saw my community post or not, but somebody took a picture of someone who'd put kiwi on a pizza, and you never see people flipping out about that. Mainly because no one knows it exists. um, Dragon, tell us a little bit about yourself and the weirdest thing you've ever had on a pizza.
So, I am a GM from Brazil. I am thankful for you to having me here, been GMing for 8 years, and I think that if you want to know what a weird pizza is, you should Google the Portuguese pizza from here.
And what is on that? That
So
sounds
basically,
intriguing.
ham, a sort of sausage, egg, cheese, sometimes onions. It's basically a pizza sandwich, if you may.
A pizza, so like, is there bread on both sides?
No, no, no bread on both sides. A pizza, but it feels like you're eating a sandwich because so much goes in it.
It it's. I was gonna say we have something called the Supreme, but that does seem to cover a lot more territory.
Yeah.
And Barlow.
Well, first of all, I will start with the pizza so I don't forget. We also put all the things on pizza here in Serbia. So I think, like, what is the strangest thing? I think that the strangest thing that I like on a pizza is egg and like fried egg. and a bit of ivar. It is a local, like a spread that's made out of bell peppers and sometimes like tomatoes, but then it has a different name, but it's pretty much the same thing. But yeah, we put everything on pizza. If pizza doesn't have a taste, like if it tastes like cardboard, the base layer, then just put anything on it and it works. I think there's one place that is very popular that has now, what is the name of that type of meat? I think it's lamb salad that goes like covers the pizza completely. I have to
Lamb
check.
salad.
I have to check if it's lamb.
Is it what would a lamb salad be? I know
No,
what lamb is, obviously, but
sorry, beef salad. So beef salad on a pizza.
no, I still don't know what beef salad is.
No, like an accidental recipe that they uncovered, and there's this one place that does it, and they do it for years now. It's super popular. I mean, the pizza tastes horrible without it, but beef salad is where it's at.
So cheese pizza is not a thing there, then, is what you're telling me.
It is, but I like to try exotic things more. And you always have, like, every pizza place has to have like that one special pizza that's there,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But
Their
anyways,
thing.
yeah. What am I doing here? Well, I have a small but nice YouTube channel about TTRPGs. I've figured out that I do so many things, I write so many things, and I wonder and ponder about the topics of TTRPGs so much that it's kind of a shame that only a couple of people in the room get to hear those things. And yeah, I decided to start the channel. Now it's 1 year old, and it's basically deep dives, philosophical questions, and like thought provoking ideas around the hobby. So I try to ask questions that most don't think about on a daily basis, and then try to research it and talk a bit about it. Sometimes it's not even research, it's just this interesting thing came to my mind and I want to share it. I do try to like touch on topics that are usually like the most asked ones, but those videos always have a bit of a twist to them. That's how I would describe it. So yeah, here I am to talk about one of my most anticipated games of 2024, and that would be Crown and Skull.
Yeah, you have quite a few very popular videos on this game, and I have never read it or looked at it, and I had not heard of it until I saw your videos up. And I have not had a chance to watch all of them yet. So I'm really eager to hear more about this. And I'm super fascinated in the chat by the number of things that go on pizza in different places. The chocolate pizza, I'm sort of interested.
I've
So
had
Yeah, I
there's
can
chocolate
see.
pizza. I
you've
just didn't consider it pizza.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on that. I also had some in Greece, I think, but yeah, that's a different meal, I would say.
Around here, chocolate pizza, we have a sort of all you can eat pizza buffet. That's sort of the dessert we would eat on van.
That was my thing about the idea of a peach pizza. I was like, it doesn't really feel like supper. It feels like it should be a dessert tart or something.
Yeah.
The sour cream on a pizza also has me. I can't eat mayonnaise, but the sour cream has me kind of interested too. And eggs seem to go on anything. Eggs and hamburgers seem to be a big thing these days. Pizza
Bacon on
is
pizza, that
that
works.
so that
Oh, that
actually
totally works.
yeah, that actually is the first thing I was thinking about this the other day. When I first started gaming, we used to get together at my friend's house, in his grandmother's, like, he had like a loft at his grandmother's house. Um, and we would order bacon pizza and we would play Dungeons and Dragons, and that was my introduction to role playing games. Pardon me. Zucchini on pizza. All right, I think we have a new contender for the pineapple argument because I don't like zucchini to start with. What does
I
everybody
like
else think?
zucchini, but it's terrible on pizza. I've had that. I'm remembering now all the weird things my brother has made me try.
Yeah, I was. How is it not like wet? That's what I want to know. Because zucchini is just. I can't. It's not that I don't like zucchini. It's that I don't like the texture.
When you roast it or when you bake it at the temperatures and speed that pizza is baked, especially if it's a thin pizza, it will actually it'll shrivel up and not get like crispy, but it'll get crispier
I
if
have
done properly.
dried zucchini slices as treats for my dog because weirdly he likes them. Okay, Eraserhead, aren't you one of the people who hates pineapple on pizza?
I mean, pineapple and zucchini, I think, yeah, you can't put them in the same basket. One is
Oh,
much more.
you absolutely can't. But most of the people that don't like pineapple don't like it because it's just not a normal, what people
Yeah,
think of
but
as a normal
zucchini can
topping. So,
be like a
It's
thing that
also
goes in a.
terrible.
all right,
Pineapple warm is ugh.
well, that's my issue. I like pineapple. I don't like hot. I don't like hot pineapple.
I don't really like any hot fruit,
Yeah, it's one of the reasons I was also questioning whether or not I was going to enjoy the
and I
peaches.
don't
But
like tomato at all. So I generally don't like pizza at all.
the peaches pizza did not have tomato on it. So all right, I would like to greet the chat. So oldest gamer was first. Good to see you, Ben. We had a lot of people who were here really early. Good to see all of you. Rachel, glad to see you coming back, and glad that you didn't have to bounce from place to place looking for dealing with technical stuff. Though somebody apparently somebody apparently is now.
Oh no.
And I apologize. There's going to be several people here that I do not know how to pronounce your names. So if anyone does know, please hop in and clue me in. But it is good to meet all of you, and I'm really glad that all of you are here. I think that covers everyone that was in early. Hopefully, we'll have a few more who straggle in as other shows get done. That is quite the loaded pizza, Ben. Okay, so unfortunately, it looks like Barlow Keep has had a bit of a technical difficulty, and he was supposed to be our first presentation. I was sort of hoping that I could stall my way through those comments and have him come back, but um, and I can't even Discord him because Discord has now decided it's going to update uh,
Oh
in
no.
huge amounts and is going to take lots of time to get that done. So, so Dragon, we'd like to start with you instead. Is that all right? Are you
I
ready to go?
finally, yes, I'm ready.
All right. Have at.
Okay, are you gonna ask me some questions, or am I just supposed to say? Sorry,
Just give us a little
this is my
rundown.
first live ever. I have no
No,
idea what I'm
no,
doing.
no.
Yeah,
That's fine.
I was thinking the same thing. That's why I was laughing. I'm sorry.
No problem at all. Just give me a little rundown on your game, how you got involved with it, anything you think that we'd like to know, and then I'll bring up chat questions for
Okay,
people that have questions. And if we have questions, we'll do that as well.
okay. So Old Dragon is a Brazil. Barrow's back. Wanna go back to him? I see him return.
That is totally up to you.
No, give him the mic. I think since he is later for him now, I think it's fair.
Okay. All right.
Whatever
Uh,
works for you. Sorry about that. I don't know what happened to this
that's okay. It
thing that we're
happens.
using.
That's okay. It happens. I have seen people bounce in and out like 6 times over the course because something didn't want to connect right. So yeah, if you can just give us a rundown, tell us about Crown and Skull, a little bit about how you got into it, anything you think we should know about the game, and then I will bring up any questions from the chat that they would like answered, and we'll ask you questions, and we'll go from there.
Sure thing. Well, I would have to start a bit back. So how I got into role playing actually is I had this friend, and I was big into board games for a while, and I had this friend who spent 5 years trying to convince me to try TTRPGs. And it's not a big hobby in Serbia. More or less, no one knows about it. We don't have stores that sell the player's guide or anything. I mean, you can get the fifth edition player's guide, but for example, for the new one to come, you would have to wait for at least 6 months or find someone to bring it to you. So this hobby doesn't have that much influence, or like it's not widespread here. And I had this one friend who was like, okay, you're playing a lot of board games, you're into fantasy, you're reading these things, you would love it. He managed to convince me after 5 years, and that was around 3 4 years ago. So I'm still pretty new to the whole thing. And I started watching videos. I started trying to figure out how to be a DM, because that role really looked like, okay, I'm a creative person. I used to work on my own video games and things, like just as a hobby. That was my way of expressing. So I was really curious about GMing. And when I started learning things, it seemed, and by the way, we started, I think my friend introduced me to Pathfinder 1 first. So we tried doing everything rules is written from Pathfinder 1, which is almost impossible as a beginner. And everything was, all the advice I found online was, okay, this is how you do it. This is how you should approach, like, make rulings, but still be very close to the rules. Don't like introduce that many homebrew things without knowing what you're doing. And of course, those big and daunting titles like this magic item can derail your campaign, this is how your campaign dies, and all that gloomy things. So I wasn't really thinking about the thing that's now the best part of the hobby for me, and that is hacking things and making your own collection of rules and mechanics, and trying to design specific mechanics that might be used only in one session, for example. And for me, that is all I wanted from game development, but without all the hurdles of game development. Like, you can just think of a thing, try it out, roll some dice at home, and see if it works. Whether in game development, you really need to like prototype it and try it out. And I was developing a VR experience at the time, so it was even harder to get any like feedback on what you've made. So I stumbled upon this community of people that are really into hacking things and doing things the quote unquote like random or wrong way, if you're asking the mainstream. And I really liked it. That just changed the way I'm thinking about the whole thing and playing the game and running games. And this was the Runehammer community. And first, I got the Index Card RPG. And of course, for those who don't know, it's supposed to be this one book for running multiple different settings, be it fantasy or sci fi or anything in between. And it pretty much simplifies all the rules so you can still have well, I would say complete experience of playing a TTRPG, but you don't need any of like additional materials, and no other books for Crown and Skull were released afterwards. And that's like it's a final product, a final thing, not meant to grow. And I really enjoyed that that book is self-contained, and it also has this philosophy of, hey, try this when you're running an encounter. Here is like just a breakdown of the simplest layouts of rooms and how that affects things, and it's put in such layman's terms that anyone can open it up, and GMing doesn't seem that daunting. It's just like a puzzle that you make, and you have a interesting encounter, you have an interesting thing. And I started following Runehammer, and all the advice was really eye opening for me. And at one point, there started a discussion of Crown and Skull, which was this big project that's going to be 5 volumes big. Uh, that is keeping the philosophy of let's try to be hacky, let's not be afraid to uh, use some rules and not use other rules, but let's try to make something that has lore, that is its own thing, like its own setting, its own style of play. And there were live streams where the creator Hank would like talk about these ideas and document the process. And I think not only as a GM but also as a game designer, I think these things were very, very valuable for me and for a lot of different people. And I don't think those streams get enough recognition. Also, the podcast RPG Mainframe, where some of those ideas were again repeated, is also an invaluable resource for DMs, in my opinion. And we come to the release of the first volume, and this is what the book looks like. And it doesn't really look like your average TTRPG, and it really caught my eye even because of that. And the golden edition is like such a nice thing to have on your shelf. Um, Crown and
It
Skull was sorry, yes.
can you hold it up again? I'm gonna blow the screen up a little bit so
Hmm.
people can see it better.
Yeah, one thing that people always complain about is that on the website it does look black, but in real life it has this grayish color. But in my
You're
opinion, both are really nice.
you're right. It really doesn't look like a like I think of a role playing. It's
And
also
when you open it,
bigger. Is it thicker than
it
most
it
role
is
playing?
thicker. It is thicker, but yeah. And when you open it, there's all the art is in one place, so you're pretty much looking at just text. But for some reason, it makes sense. The way the thickness of the paper, everything, it has a certain like. It feels like those old like ancient tombs. It feels like arcane thing, you know.
It looks like a novel I just want to sit down and
Yeah,
read.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's a book I must own just to own.
Look at the golden edition. It's a bit more expensive, and I didn't get it because shipping to here
Yeah.
is like infinite amount of money, basically getting it to Serbia. But yeah, the golden edition is so cool, just to put on the shelf.
Yeah.
Oh
Now
yeah,
I
Um,
really need to
there is
sell some
the
things so I can have money to buy things.
same. I was thinking about that.
um, how much does well, I don't know. You're probably gonna have to do some translating for us here. Where can you usually get this, and how much? Well, I mean, we've got this link here, but like, is it
Yeah, pretty
available on
much.
other
It's
Amazon
available
or
on. I
bookstores or?
don't know about Amazon because the whole book, basically, Runehammer is also a publisher. So the community usually pre-orders the book. The volume 2 is now available for pre-order, and I'm not like in any way associated with Runehammer. I just really like the things. But yeah, they are their own publisher, so you can get those books from there. And now there is a physical shop also like owned by Runehammer that sells all of these things and some things that you can't even find on the web store.
Hmm.
So I think the basic version, the one I have, goes for $50, and the golden edition goes for 80. But I'm not sure about the prices. You can check it at this link that's in the chat.
Yeah, it's the price of role playing books in general is tends to be pretty high, so that sounds like a lot, but honestly, I'm not sure it's I'm not sure it's really much different.
Well,
How
PDFs
many
are
books
always an
are the
option.
how many books are in the like core rule book
For
thing? Is
now,
it just one book?
it's one book. So there is
Yeah,
volume 1,
so
volume 2 is coming out, and they're all gonna have the same structure. So I think the structure is interesting. You have stories inside, like fluff around the mechanics and everything that is really evocative. The whole world of Northolds is pretty much contained in the book, and you have these a lot of attention went into making it fun to explore. So you have random things, of course, random tables and like your map crawling. Um, Also, there are a bunch of GM tips and a lot of lore, and of course rules. And I think the rules are the tiniest part of the book. Honestly, this is a
Okay.
system that can be learned really, really fast. Um, but
Because if you can play with just the one book and it has that much stuff in it and it's that thick, I think, even $80 is a perfectly reasonable price for a
Yeah,
tabletop RPG book.
yeah. I was.
Because,
I,
like, D&D needs 3 books, and, each one is 50, $60, whatever. If you get the hard copy, you know,
no,
that's
totally. I think
$150 there. So,
you can. It is designed in that way as well as in the Discard RPG, so you can just take this book, go somewhere, and play. There is, I would say that if you are running the intro adventure, I do have a video on that, going over all the things. If you're a beginner DM, that might be a bit, problematic, and on the other side, if you are after that, if you're asking for more content, there are no other adventures in the book, but there are procedurally generated dungeons, and there is things about the world in like every part of the map, and about cities and towns and how they look. There is a lot about the setting, but it's not complete. So e- every book that comes out will build on top of it. I don't know how that will look in practice. I think it would be just an addition, more skills, more lore, more dungeons, more enemies. But I'm not sure how that will look. Honestly, I'm also waiting for it to be released and then dive
well,
in.
I mean, excuse me, settings are never done.
No, of course, but I think rules are
No
gonna be
one's ever
expanded as well.
finished a setting truly.
But I think rules are also gonna be expanded on, because Hank said that every
Yeah.
volume will be structured the same. So I expect some rules to be at the beginning and some gem tips in the middle, and you have,
Rules
yeah,
can always be expanded as well,
yeah.
I found.
But
so
these
I.
rules, I would like. Oh, sorry.
Oh, I was just gonna say. I don't know why, but this entertains me greatly.
Oh, yes, that's a new thing. There are Runehammer socks now.
Not T-shirts, not coffee cups,
There
socks.
are there are coffee mugs, I think, and there are hoodies,
Are
but
there?
and dice, really cool dice,
Well, of course you've got to have dice.
of course.
Oh, that's actually a good question. Does this run on basic role-playing dice?
So the rules and why I think this is a unique game now, and why I think this might not be for everyone, is yes, it uses normal polyhedral dice. It's a D20 roll under system that is completely player facing. So most of the dice are being rolled by the players, and that's how you answer questions. That's how you do things. Where it differs from other RPGs I've tried so far is that you have limited inventory that contains both your skills and your gear, and whenever you get hit, you get attrition damage, which basically means you're, depending on the type of attrition, you're either removing something from your inventory or just completely destroying it. And when you get to when you have nothing to defend yourself with, no skills or no inventory, you are done. You die. And why this is interesting and a bit problematic is, narratively speaking, if you get hit by, I don't know, a bandit with a bat, and you get dealt basic attrition, this would mean that you have to cross over one item from your inventory, and you choose, okay, it will be my helmet. The GM will describe your helmet falling from your head and going under the table, for example. And now you have to think about getting your helmet back. The act of you getting your helmet back will kind of heal you, because you're getting the helmet back. But it changes how you look at combat, and it changes how you perceive healing. And you know, as long as you have even like a torch, you can still defend yourself a bit. And then when the torch is done, you are kind of screwed. You get that little blow. Uh, the thing that I think is problematic with this approach is that players, on the other hand, deal damage, regular damage. And we run into the problem of it not being, I mean, we run into the problem of it being asymmetric in that way. Now, the answer to this question is, well, whenever you have a player gone rogue, there is some conversions. Most of these hacks are on the Runehammer forums or Discord. But yeah, you kind of have to rule it on the fly. Same goes if your enemy becomes an ally for whatever reason. You need to take one of the templates from the character creation and then use that. But yeah, players don't have a lot of stats, and also like making enemies is pretty easy, so you can kind of make an argument that you can do it on the fly, but still it works perfect when you don't consider those edge cases.
It's a very interesting system.
Can you give me
Makes
an
my creative brain turn.
Yeah, can you give me an example of I mean, you said that you get hit and your helmet falls off, but you can retrieve your helmet. How do you deal with skills? How do you deal with the loss of skills?
Right, so I think that the easiest example would be you get hit by a sword and you're dealt basic attrition, which means basic just means cross it off, don't like destroy it, or you're not losing something permanently. But and basic attrition says that you can choose what you want to lose. There are like bigger attrition levels that sometimes make you lose something at random, or even just destroys something at random. That's the most brutal one. But if you're losing a skill, let's say you get slashed by a sword, you can say, okay, um, I've, I don't know, tried to dodge that and the sword cut my leg. Now I can't use the jump skill, for example. Or I've heard people use, okay, I got hit by a bat in the head. I can't use some negotiation skills, for example, because I'm like full of rage and I can't get my words to, you know, manipulate someone. So when you say that one of the things that you must do is um, think of a narrative reason why you're losing this skill and not another one, sometimes it is interesting to see what players come up with, but other times you have to be ready to do it for some players, because not everyone will have an answer ready right away.
I
So you'll
am
have to say,
always
you know.
I am always in favor of any game that requires players to BS me.
Yeah, definitely.
You can if you can argue with me why you should be able to do it, you can do it.
That's my philosophy always, 100%. So I think I should mention who this game could be for. For
Mhm.
example, you have people that are strictly on the tactical side. You have those people that I used to play with that like the simulation aspect. They like the rules covering everything. They like their combat to be more akin to a board game. Then you have, on the other hand, Powered by the Apocalypse stuff, which is completely narrative based. And
Mhm.
I think the struggle is always how to make something that is in between, but where it doesn't go into the realm of this is not believable enough or this is not fair enough. And I think Crown and Skull is one of the games that tries to fit into that category. Index Card RPG is a fine game. It's a very nice game. It's very simple from the same creator, so it gets the job done on the side of okay, this is a very simple game that doesn't have that much tactics and is not that pulling onto the narrative side, but it's still too simple in a way. You can play it for years and there is a huge community around it, but for me it doesn't scratch the same itch as something like Crown and Skull would.
Mhm.
And I think a lot of things in Crown and Skull was asking the questions how to make the game faster and how to make it easier for the DM to do some things. And I think some of the decisions were made even like okay, let's ask the players to subvert their disbelief a bit more for the sake of making things faster. And I think the biggest thing here is abstracting resources. So I know everybody likes loot. Loot is like in a fantasy game that's the thing, you want loot. And Crown and
Why
Skull
else
asked the
would we go
question
around invading dungeons?
exactly. And when you find, like I would say, a named item, something that's really cool and valuable, you put it into your inventory. But if you find just random stuff that you can sell and then get, I don't know, gold, and then with that gold buy a new item, you're basically doing some repeated steps that can sometimes anyone who had a party prepare for going into an adventure knows that you can spend a whole session just buying things if you're role playing all of that. I love it, and I have players that really love it. But there are games that abstract resources, like well, Call of Cthulhu has the credit rating. There are also other games. I think there is uh, an OGL version of Cthulhu that we play, Cthulhu Eternal. They use just the resource values, and they say how much you have in like an abstract number. In Crown and Skull, everything revolving around progression is tied to hero points. Hero points are basically your currency for building the character, for leveling up, for I don't know, buying loot, finding loot. So there is no gold. There is no, okay, I want to loot this goblin. Does he have a dagger? Can I use this dagger to attack? Well, technically, everything that you find is subpar to what you already have. And with that philosophy, you take looting out of the game. For on my videos, I think the biggest argument against this game is that people just love looting, and it's a deal breaker to award your players for hero points instead of giving them a cool item at the end of the dungeon. But then we come back to the original philosophy. Well, you can give them a dagger from the goblin. You just need to treat it as a healing item in other games. So you know you're giving them something that has damage output and is healing. Also, you can add gold back into the game. Make a conversion for your own sake. Uh, that's the approach. So in its original form, yes, it saves time by using hero points, and it has the hero point economy, but that doesn't stop us from changing that.
So, question: is there a way that you could like sell yourself to death, as in sell all your items and suddenly you're dead? Or would the hero
Um,
points that you get from selling them keep you alive?
well, I think you
Because I can
can't
see some
sell
of my
yourself to
players
death.
doing that.
Yeah, of course, that's a logical question. I haven't thought of that, but let's say if you sell all your items, you still have all your skills. And now there is
Okay.
debate on how you want to approach. There was a debate on Discord how you want to approach looking at health. So, is your inventory one part of your health and skills another? Are they two independent, like health bars? And I think there was a official like conclusion to this. I don't remember what it was, because to me it makes sense that if you have lost your gear, now you're being attacked directly to your skills. So it's a matter of choice, but yes, you can certainly sell all your items and go naked into the wild, but then I think all of the attrition would come to your skills. And I
Okay.
think you
So,
have to
and you
have
can't sell your
additional.
skills.
No, no. Like I'm
Okay.
selling my ability to jump. That I mean, I if I got that question, I would not be surprised. That would not shake me even a bit. I would say sure, sell it. If you're talking to a fey demon, let's say I mean a fey creature, you can sell your
Yeah.
ability to jump. It makes sense.
Yeah. I sell myself to the point where I'm dead. Oops.
So I'm trying to picture this. If they loot, let's say, a dagger off someone they've defeated, it only counts as a healing thing. But their sword could be destroyed. Can they still use the dagger, or is it only a healing item?
Well, I would say use it. I wouldn't say that's. I would maybe say, okay, if you start using it, it's a really bad dagger, so you can use it for, I don't know, 2 encounters and then it falls apart. That's the thing. You are not. The rules say anything that you loot is not usable, but like you can use it. It's. I don't think anything in the book should be taken like rules as written in that sense. And there is a post on Patreon. Uh, I will try to find who it is later when we're done and post the link where there is a post going over these things like how you would approach looting a dead goblin. What do you say to your players? I mean, I think it's really a matter of taste. Honestly, you just have to be aware as the GM that you're giving an item to the player. Every time you're giving an item, you need to be aware that you're also healing them in a bit, like in a way. So I think that's a bit strange.
Are you healing them, or are they getting more hit points as they increase in?
Well, when I say healing, I mean like they can sustain another hit because every hit. So the damage. Let's talk about enemies. Enemies have tactics. Those are three things that they can do, and you roll to see what of those three things they will do. You roll a d6, I think, which makes enemy AI really simple. But of course, you don't do things that are nonsensical as the DM. You try to like direct those die rolls, direct those actions of the enemy. But you have a couple of stats like defense, attack, and you have um, phases in which enemies play. And remind me again, what was the original question?
So, like in something like D&D, people would increase their hit points as they
Oh,
go up in
yes,
level.
yes,
So,
absolutely.
is getting more loot the equivalent of
So yeah, why I wanted
increasing hit points?
to, yeah, why I wanted to mention enemies because every tactic that the enemy have um, has damage that is being dealt, and it goes like you would see literally just written basic attrition or I don't know, brutal attrition or something. And this would actually tell you how many things you cross from your inventory, meaning that these things are dropped or destroyed. So if we imagine that you are in a battle and you're losing equipment and some of it gets destroyed, I would say that the things that are completely destroyed, that you can't recover or repair in any way at the moment, that's your permanently lost HP. And as you find another item, if the GM says yes, you can equip it or carry it in your inventory, you're basically recovering some of that permanently lost HP.
So this isn't like you don't gain hit points or spell slots back when you rest then.
If they're just crossed off, yes, you get some of those back. But if they are permanently destroyed, you don't get them back. So that's an interesting thing. Like if you have an enemy that has a type of attrition that would destroy things, you can see how that's really, you might want to hide your expensive equipment and try to work with anything you have, and just having players go and try to loot dead bodies to keep having garbage equipment because they're fighting something corrosive, for example, that's already a puzzle and a challenge on its own. So I think it adds another layer of like tactical thinking. For example, I know that there was this one sword that pretty much was overpowered, and I know that the players tried to get this sword to whoever is attacking next so that they can like continue using it. There was a reverse situation as well where players would try to like hide one item, and as this big crab was picking players one by one, they tried to like pass down the sword so it doesn't get destroyed.
So what's the difference between an item being lost and an item being destroyed? Like
Well, the
what
scenario that I described with the helmet, where you get boinked and your helmet falls down, that's just you scratch the item, you can return it. Just in the next turn, run to the table, pick up the helmet, put it back on. Your like your defense is up. You have your skill like you remove the crossover thing. But if you get your item destroyed, that would be like, I don't know, someone splits your helmet in two. That's not really realistic, but you know, yeah.
But I think at least what I'm hearing the question being, and this is what I'm wondering as well, is how do you know? Is it just the DMGM tells you, okay, it was destroyed or it was lost? Or is it a difference in roles? Or is it a difference in the action that the monster does? Or
Yes,
Uh,
that was my question. Thank you.
yes, different types of attrition have in their description what they do. Um, Let me just pull this. I will find it.
because otherwise the GM has a whole bunch of power.
I mean, that's the
Yeah,
nature of
I mean,
being a
it's not
GM.
any more power than a DM in D&D does, but
I was gonna say, rocks fall is always an option in any game,
it's
but
always an option. Yeah.
um, but yeah, I am sort of curious as to what the methodology is for what is considered a break versus a loss.
Hmm.
If a helmet breaks, if you lose a helmet, you can pick it up and put it back on. If a helmet breaks, can you grab an enemy's helmet and put it on?
Well, that's the part that's at GM discretion, so to say. So, yes, if you lose a helmet, I mean, it's completely destroyed. There is no recovering it. You remove it from your character sheet, and now you want to take the enemy's helmet. Uh, the reasoning behind you not being able to do it is you can think of many reasons, but let's say it's strapped really well to the enemy's head, or it's not fitting your head well, and you can always give that reason. Oh well, you cannot recover this loot. You can only recover it through hero points. But I think if any player goes and says, "I want to do this like thing where I run to this enemy that's fighting another player and try to take his helmet and put it on my head." I can imagine that scene. For me, that's a viable turn. That's a turn you took to heal in a way. So I would still say that makes sense for me. But I can see, like, for example, my main group, they don't really like Crown and Skull because of these things. So I always result to reintroducing gold, for example, and I would always let things like that happen. So if you want to run to the enemy and you have chosen to go and basically use your turn just for that, totally fine by me. You can heal an item.
I mean, some of that I really like. The idea of taking like, for instance, a goblin's helmet for loot has always confused me because they have different shaped heads.
Well, in
But
Pathfinder, it's like medium, small, or like big types of armor and stuff.
on the other hand, if I was totally out of weapons and someone was swinging a sword at me, picking a helmet up and trying to block with it definitely might be a realistic attempt.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think if someone is going through the lengths to actually like imagine everything and figure out how to save themselves from certain death, I think that is in a way that works for me. I would never disallow it.
Hmm.
And you know, after the first attack of the enemy, you know you know what attacks deal like attrition that is just you cross off an item versus what attacks will actually destroy something. It's written in the attack, basically in the monster stat block.
Yeah. It does seem like it would be a system you'd really have to get to know and have to figure out the tactics to.
Yes, you would need to run a couple of games to see where these edge cases are and tweak it to work with your group for sure. I don't think it would work, especially like just going with the fact that it's a roll under system and it uses a d20. You would have to introduce the fact that the d20, when it falls to natural 20, it's a fumble and not a crit. Just that one fact doesn't work for some groups. I mean, this is something that you can't patch out, but I can see it being repulsive in a way to some people. Still, I think a lot of interesting and innovative things are being done in this game, and the fact that it gives so many material and has a community around it, I think that is the part that I really like.
Yeah. I was actually I mostly run, but I was sort of thinking that as a player, I'd have to play it through a couple of times. I I have been accused of messing with games. I prefer to think of it as finding new ways to make things creative. Um, but I do like trying to come up with, combos other people don't normally think of in order to.
You would kind of like, I know you mentioned you don't like spellcasting that much. I think I heard it in one of the previous streams, right?
Yeah, not
Uh,
a Magic fan.
well, in Crown and Skull, you have three ways of using magic. One is, and I'm not talking about magic schools or all that on or anything like that. I want to say that you have the beginner's way of doing it. You just have spells. Then you have a way to customize those spells. Add some. All the spells have default values, the same default value across each spell. So you can only do touch attacks with them. You can only deal, I don't know, 1d6 damage for like 1d6 rounds, I think. I don't know. And you can add things to your spells with hero points. You can add flaws and benefits, and you're creating your own spell. Now, there is a layer after this is where you don't take a basic spell and upgrade it. You start from one of the upgrades and you create your own spell out of that. And then there is a next level of you describing a spell. And this is for situations where the dungeon master knows everything in this uh, part of the book. And you describe a spell, and your dungeon master says, okay, roll this to see if that spell will work. So you basically craft it on the fly, and that's called wild magic, and it's pretty interesting. And I think you can find new ways to exploit things here, but I think the game itself says I want to be exploited in a way. You can do it the same thing with equipment as well, and make some pretty broken stuff. But if that's the thing someone wants to do, this game and I think this community is just looking at things from the point of view, okay, let's not be cheesy, like, let's not make it less fun for everyone else, but as long as it's creative and it works, like the GM is supposed to just let it happen. That's a big philosophy here, I would say.
Yeah, I don't like, despite the jokes, I don't like breaking things. I just like finding interest. I like to try interesting combination, like the pizza thing. I like to try interesting combinations and see what works and what's terrible. Um, so Mad Norseman says that he started a fight once, made someone leave their books behind and cry twice. So yeah, I'm not not that kind of not that kind of breaking things, but yeah, I think this is more me. I can exploit any system. That's why I'm forced to be the forever game master. I totally agree with that. That is me.
And
And no,
that's why you're forced to be a game master.
and no, Rachel, I don't enjoy breaking them. I just like to try new combinations. I like to put square things at round pegs and see what happens.
Yeah. It's not breaking, it's just, we're gonna use a nicer word.
No, it really is one of the reasons I like being a game master so much is because there's a lot more freedom to try putting things together in different combinations and seeing what happens. Um, yeah, okay, that does seem kind of broken, prophetic. In AD&D, I made a monk that would take over kingdoms by himself in under a week at level 11. I mean, one of my complaints about 5e is that everything is overpowered and you can fight dragons at level 5. Uh, not crazy about that. Um, on the other hand, I probably would be the person that would say, okay, can I can't use this helmet because it's the wrong shape. Can I use it to try and like bat a sword away because I have no other options? That kind of.
Yeah,
So I got a
that's when
frog in my
we
throat.
I'm gonna just set it on my head and tie it down with a belt or something that I looted off the goblin.
yeah, yeah.
Well, but see, that's the thing is that I'm too black and white to think in ways like that. But I would think about, it's a metal object I can put between me and the sharp pointy thing. Um, I might think to try and tie it to my hand and use it as a shield of some sort. Um,
Still,
but yeah, if I'm told I can't use it as a helmet, my brain immediately like, crosses that off the list of possible things to do. I wouldn't try find other ways to.
But I would hate it, uh, not to be able to do something like that. That's like, okay, you have improvised things, a lot of rules about improvised things in Pathfinder, and that's fine. It's covered by rules, but sometimes I don't want to go through rules to get that to work. You get a feeling for the numbers, you kind of make them up on the fly because you've done it so many times that you like intuitively know where it's at. And at that point, if you're doing it like that, um, yeah, I would never say you can't do it. Like, okay, if it has rules for it, we can use them. If it doesn't have rules for it, we can still do it. We will manage it, figure it out somehow.
Oh, don't get me wrong. If I was the game master and someone said, "Can I tie the helmet onto my head?" I would say absolutely. I'm just not clever enough to think of it myself. Yeah, there we go. The goat, the goat, the goat attack. Everyone loves
To
a good
go at
headbutt.
that. Um,
There was a question for you. Well, made me think of a question. Someone said, "Carry all the loot and become a god." Um,
there
do
is a
you?
limit. There is a limit, and it's like 10 items, I think, and 10 skills. And you can get a backpack to make it bigger, but at all times, that's what you can carry on you. If you
Mhm.
have a mule that's carrying more stuff, good for you. You can run there and get more stuff, but you can't hoard enormous amounts of things on yourself. And also, there is a line. What if I um, take like biscuits and I fill the whole bag with them and I can just take them out and have armor made of biscuits? But the answer to that is that's the part where we all sit around the table and we can all agree that's kind of, a bit.
When the other players look at you and go, "What?"
Yeah, you can see from the reactions of people, you can see like, yeah, this is not exploiting rules anymore. This is trying to take rules as like
Yeah,
laws
it's
of
just breaking the.
physics. It's
Yeah,
just not working.
it's an instantaneous trial by jury of your peers when they give you
Yes.
that look that says, "Are you insane?" Um, so how do you gain strength if the number of items you can use goes up and you don't get loot that's stronger? Like, how do you I don't know, level up for lack of a better term?
Well, to get more gear, you need hero points. To get better spells, to upgrade your spells, you need more hero points. At one point, you will end up having to choose the path of the crown or path of the skull. And that's at around, I think, 20 hero points. And then you get additional um, some abilities that you can use for both of those paths. And those paths are, I don't want to say they're not good and evil. They're more like order and chaos, but not really like maybe a light version of that. Um, it's two different approaches to solving problems. One is you know, the roguish type, and another is a more paladin-ish type, warrior type. And yeah, you have, even for casters, I think at one point, if you're a wizard, you have three paths that open up, and like all of these things require hero points. So you're getting hero points for completing things, completing sessions. Sometimes you're awarded hero points as inspiration, just if you did something cool, and you use them to level up. My problem with the system that I see currently here, and it's a maybe it's just a me problem, is that with the current system you can play around 20 sessions before you reach a sort of a cap. Now, having a game that you can comfortably run for 20 sessions is, I think, more than enough, and you don't have to end it after that. You can continue, and of course, your rewards don't have to be that big. You can always tweak all of these things, but I think the game works best when you cap it at 20 sessions, where you reward, I think, 3 hero points per session. I might have made that number up, but yeah, that's the principle of it.
So on a scale of like 1 to 10, 1 being paranoia where you can actually die during character generation, and 10 being tune where you absolutely cannot die no matter what you do in the game. Uh, how bad is the fatality in this game if you have a player that thinks reasonably well?
Well, I think it's pretty fatal when you come into the territory of stronger monsters. Like you can comfortably make someone die if you want as a GM, of course. But if you have an enemy that has, so let me see. I think, yeah, I found the names of attrition types. So you have basic attrition that says cross off one equipment or skill, flash attrition that randomly selects a skill to cross off, equipment that does the same thing but to equipment, destroys one random equipment and crosses off one randomly selected skill. The destroyed equipment is permanently lost. And brutal attrition that causes 1d6 total random equipment and skills to be crossed off. So 1d6, you're losing a lot of things. Now, when you fall unconscious, this is an interesting thing, and I think the last big thing I want to point out is initiative. It's not your regular initiative order where you roll, or any of the new fancy things where you have custom orders. It's every while you're not in combat in an encounter, you can think of you can select one number, 1 through 5. This is your phase, and then enemies also have phases. So if you say I want to play in phase 1, you will always play in phase 1. And how this works is the GM announces, okay, we're in initiative, you can't change your phases anymore. Who goes in phase 1? All the players go in phase 1, then all the enemies go in phase 1. Those that have chose that chose the phase 1. And we go through phases. Okay, 2, we have no one in 2. Do we have someone in 3? Oh, one enemy is playing in 3. 4, we have 2 players in 4. And you just announce the number of the phase and see who acts in it. The interesting thing is that enemies can play in multiple phases. So you can have one skeleton that plays on phase 1 and phase 3, which automatically makes this skeleton more dangerous. And to make it even uh, more deadly, the whole situation, if you die, you have until the end of phase 5 to be revived in some way, or you're permanently dead. So now you have to think about, okay, if I have an enemy that attacks in phase 5 and deals, I don't know, brutal attrition, that can be like completely devastating because you're losing your last items, and if no one else is playing in phase 5, you're done. So you would always have a healer type that will prefer phase 5 to get someone up again. If
I was
multiple
just going to
players
ask
are
that,
playing,
yeah.
yeah. If multiple players are in the same phase, they can, of course, change the order, interchange the order. So how deadly it is? Well, if you throw a couple of goblins at them and they're just starting out, they will be fine. Then, if you think that's too easy, you can always just make characters that have less hero points. And the interesting thing is, people who played Dark Souls know about the whole naked man run where you just start without like nothing. There are people that are playing zero hero point characters. You start without anything. You try to build up like your character, almost like gauntlets.
I know a few masochistic people that would want to play that way immediately.
I tried making people do it, but as I said, I'm maybe because this game is pretty oriented towards GMs having fun and moving things along fast. I think maybe it's um, closer to my heart than to people I try to present it and make play. So I had, I would say, in total around 10 different Crown and Skull sessions, but I couldn't get a small campaign to run because just some of these things are real deal breakers for my players. So I would usually run one shots or something like a two shot, three shot.
Ease them into it. So can only enemies use multiple attacks? Excuse me. Good heavens.
I think so.
Or can
Yes, I would
players?
say so.
Okay, because someone wanted to know if a player had multiple attacks, do they
And
have to be in the same phase?
so if a player, I think players don't have a way to have multiple attacks. I might be lying about that. I don't know the rules by heart. But if you, yeah, I don't know about players, but enemies can have two phases. Players can only have one phase and have one movement and one action, or they can have both. I'm not sure if it's and or there, but you can do just one thing. That's the whole deal. So the phases go really fast,
Hmm.
and you constantly feel like even if you have holes, like no one is playing in phase two or in phase four, you are going around the table really fast.
Okay.
But yeah, enemies can have multiple attacks on their phase. I think they have a number of tactics that they can do in one. There it is. On your phase, it's your turn to act. You can have three options: move, perform an action, or hurry, which is do it both. So yeah, you can only move, perform an action, or do both. But then enemies have a like a plus when they attack you.
Hmm. Sounds like you have to have a very tactics-oriented player group.
Well,
Um, Sorry, go ahead.
experience wise, yeah, I would not call the group that I play tested this the most with a tactics oriented group, but they manage. It's when you say it like this, everything seems very different, but when you play it, it kind of works. I think the combat is fun and people figure out quite fast because you're not gonna throw an enemy that attacks in like three phases or attacks at phase five with all its might right away. Maybe you do it to scare the players off or like show them this is what you're going to overcome at one point. But yeah, the first fights are enough for people to get the gist of okay, these skills I will sacrifice first, these items I will carry just in case.
Hmm.
They start preparing.
I mean, those seem like tactics, and you also seem like a nicer GM than I am. So,
Probably. Well, there are some horrible things that I do to my players, but they are usually in um, modern horror games. That's my genre of choice at the moment. So there, I would say things can get a bit messy.
all right. Anything else that you should know? If not, we'll.
I don't think so. I've managed to just talk about mechanics, which I thought I would give it a bit more, flair. But mm, yes, that's
Well,
how it always ends with me.
you already have people talking about how they might jury rig some of this into their own like campaigns of different types. So I think
Definitely.
already already some discussion going on. Well, thank you very much. Dragon.
Sorry, got
That's
a little had to unmute right now.
that's okay.
So, talking a bit about how I got into RPGs, believe it or not, my first game was at an anime convention here in my town. And the group I played with was an indie group that created a lot of narrative driven games. When I started to know the group I am a part now, my main RPG group or my IRL group, they were really into D&D and they really insisted for me to GM that because I was learning the ropes. But when I saw the size of the book, I said, okay, not gonna happen. And I started to research so that I could find something that would work. That's how I got into Old Dragon, the first edition, to be more precise. That game was wild because it was pretty much picking 3.5 and basic expert and mixing it together. There was a lot of rolls. Sometimes you rolled D20, sometimes D6, sometimes D100. And for second edition, I will talk a bit about both second edition and its Pocket second edition. Pocket will have a lot less stuff to talk. So for the second edition, they streamlined a lot of stuff. Like they made most roles work in a D20 under system. So when let's suppose the fighter or anyone wants to move a boulder, a giant boulder from the streets, all they gotta do is do a check in strength. If I have 17 strength, I have to roll under that. But there are ways the GM can change it or ways to get a sort of penalty or an advantage, but you add that to the main number. For instance, if I have a +1 advantage, I add that to my strength score, and I really like that because it gives the score a reason to exist in the game rather than just give me my modifier. Another thing they kept from first edition was that you still need a d6, but just for a few skill checks. Mainly the thief class is the one that would need the skills no matter what. It should roll a lot because the thief's main job in this game should be the scout of the group. There are exceptions like some subclasses, and they'll get there, but the main job is like making sure no one dies in a trap. And lastly, for combat, and I think 5e people would feel really comfortable here because it's basically the same thing. You want to roll over the armor class. You get your d20, you roll the die, and you need to roll over the armor of the enemies. For Pocket Edition, and it's a little tricky to talk about it because each is an independent game, but it works best taking material from the main game to make it work. It's a 2d6 system where you have a sort of unified stat. You roll 2d6, you add to that stat that goes up every few levels. And the main thing I like about the pocket version is that the players will always roll a defense while the monsters will have a fixed AC. What I mean by that is that when the players are being attacked, they have the right to roll 2d6, add their armor class, which is not a lot in the pocket version, and if they manage to try to block the monster's attack. But the monsters, if they have like 5 AC, it's 5 AC. It's an advantage to teach players quicker. I'll talk a bit about the classes of the main game. We have only 4 classes in this game. Basically, the warrior, the cleric, the wizard, and the thief. They are they work more or less like you'd expect from a D&D based game, but they are really they don't have skills per se. They're really good in what they're supposed to be good. Like the cleric is supposed to be good with sort of wisdom, and the warrior is supposed to be strong. All the other classes, they will be subclasses of those 4. So let's suppose I don't want to play a basic warrior. I can, even at level 1, subclass as a paladin. And just so to say a few changes this game makes is that the paladin class does not have to follow a set code of honor. I like to say the game makes you create your code, and that code can be anything that makes sense. I like to say it's like the tenets from Assassin's Creed. The assassins have that code and they must follow it by the order. The same is for the paladin, but you create what that code is.
So I,
Um, I,
I just wanna
I,
interject just for a second. The links that you sent me, I have put in the chat, and those are for translations, correct,
correct, correct.
of the
Because
game?
the link, I can see a link here, but that's for the Brazilian site. You will not get that in English.
It does. Some browsers will translate it, but how well or how effectively, I'm not sure. So,
Yeah. So I would also like to apologize for the fast play because that's not 100% done yet. I mean, it's done, but I am currently working on revision of that. So the English is not perfect. So another nice thing about Old Dragon is how initiative and load your what you can carry works. So in initiative, you have to roll under, but you have two options: either your wisdom. No, sorry, I made a mistake here. You have to roll under wisdom to for initiative. And the players are trying to act before the monsters because the monsters will always act together. A player that passes its initiative test will act before a monster, but the order of the players that's up to you to figure out. There are no rules are remembered to say, oh, which player rolled low enough so he goes first. No, you figure that out as you go. And another nice thing is that for load you have to you have points in load, not weight per se. So let's say, and that's another reason for the ability score, because let's say I have a 17 strength, I can carry 17 points of items. But if constitution is my highest, then I can also carry that. So basically that makes things easier even for the wizard, because the wizard would naturally have low strength but not necessarily a low constitution, so it should still be able to carry, if you put enough points in constitution, a lot of things. Another change the game makes from traditional is with the races, because races here will not give you a bonus on your ability score, but rather on your saving throw. Since this game still retains elements from 3.5, it has three main saving throws for will, constitution, and dexterity. And some classes are better in defending in some events. So let's suppose you're an elf. You will have your better defenses at will. You're better at resisting mind effects.
so they still have the racial. Is this one of those where like your race is your class? I'm
No,
sorry.
no, no, no. The race is not the class. You can pick an elf and also be a warrior. But nice you ask that because some races have exclusive subclasses. For instance, I want to play a wizard, but I want my wizard to be able to wield a sword. I can be an elf and pick the. Let me see their correct name, please. Just a second. Okay. I can be an elven adventurer. That's basically an elf that is able to cast magic when he reaches higher levels, but is also good with a sword. So it's basically like having the best of the wizard and the warrior without breaking the game in the process by multi-classing. But only the elf can do that.
It seems like everyone would want to be an elven adventurer.
Not necessarily, because the dwarf also has his own unique subclass, the dwarven warrior. Same goes for the halfling.
Is
Community wise, the game will open right after it has a site where you can translate a lot of, and that I can say will be well translated. The Where there's a lot of resources from homebrew magic, classes, races, whatever you need.
there a specific advantage to playing a human?
Yes, yes. Aside from being able to put, if I'm not mistaken, you can choose whatever you want to be good at defending, but humans also advance faster figures.
Oh.
They gain. You have extra XP that you gain. You gain a 10% XP, extra XP from whatever you do. Like, let's say, same goes for the half elf, but that's cut by half because, well, he's only half human.
Hmm. Hmm. That yeah, that advancement definitely would make it more worth
It's
it.
all about how you want to balance your party. Ideally, you will have all four classes in your party. The races can be much more up to the player, but after playing this game for as long as I have, I figure that having all classes is really vital because you will need a thief to disarm traps. You will need a caster in order to, especially in lower levels, to cast light and stuff like that. You will need a cleric to supplement both, and you will need a warrior to be the tank.
Yeah, one of the early issues with early D&D though was that there was always someone who got forced to be the cleric because nobody wanted to do that job.
Yeah, but honestly, if I were to play a cleric here, I would. I think most people would be happy with the outcast. So the Outcast is a cleric that more or less forsake his oaths. He heals like a doctor would heal in our world. He can gain access to magic in higher levels,
Hmm.
but due to sort of being, for lack of a better term, an oathbreaker, he carries swords with him. So it's not like, because he doesn't care about upsetting his god, he will not only limit himself to the maces, he will carry swords and arrows if he has to.
Hmm. And you said that they get magic at later levels. Is that like they
Only the
regain?
Outcast. So the Outcast is a cleric that at higher levels will gain back the favor of his god. But if you're any other cleric class, then you're able to cast in the spells normally. You just have to pray for them at a safe space.
Hmm. Yeah, what I was going to ask is with that class, do they have to? Is there like a regaining of some gods'
Yeah, there
approval,
is,
or?
yeah, there is. You, as an outcast in lower levels, you don't have that. You don't have your god's favor anymore because they see you as a traitor. Because as you level up, your god will start to notice you again and will partially forgive you, giving you back some of your cleric abilities up to an extent.
You've lost our trust and have to relearn it.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, question from the chat: can you switch gods mid-game? Are there specific gods in the game that clerics have
So
to?
I say this, that depends on the setting, that depends on the GM. Like the base game itself is like a generic fantasy, that should depend on the GM. But
Hmm.
what I can say for sure is that alignment is not something I recommend changing midway, because alignment here is neutrality, law, and chaos. So I suggest that the players know what they want before going into the game.
It is an interesting idea, though, if you had a cleric that had broken their oath to one god, and they get their magic back because they another god takes them in instead. That would be kind of interesting,
Yeah, that would
dep-
be.
depending on
I
the
will
game.
try that. I'll be honest. I'll try that the next time I have a cleric. I'll suggest that to them because that's a really nice idea.
Does the original god then get mad because you
That could be
betrayed?
that could be a one heck of a story point to have.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
That's kind of what I was thinking, was that that could really become a central point to your game, is that you not only have to like make up with one god, but now you're serving a different. It's like a romantic relationship love
Yeah,
triangle gone terribly wrong.
imagine coming out of your tavern room and just going to breakfast with other party members and saying to them, "I think I just cheated on a god." Like, I wouldn't want to hear that at breakfast.
Yeah, then the next moment, the high priest, the level 20 high priest appears because the god said for him to punish you.
And by the way,
Fantastic.
now she's going to take it out on all of us because she thinks you were a bad influence.
So, things aside, the game has its own unique settings like Valencia, and many others. The community is quite active, especially homebrewing settings. There's a The Witcher setting fan made here. There's like for Ragnarok Online. People here are really passionate about that game, so much that the owners every year invite people at the Old Dragon Day to make their own versions. And if anyone is interested, I will say that the pocket version is easily hackable and you can make your own versions of that, no problem. That was the most hacked version of this game since first edition.
Yeah, so that particular type of storytelling is what I mean when I say I like to play with games. It's not breaking it, it's just making the story a little bit more different. I don't want to break the game. I just want to cheat on a god with another god.
And making the rest of the players miserable.
Just a little. Just gives them something to do. They'd get bored if they sat around too long.
Or if you didn't cheat on a god.
Any questions from the chat? All right. I suspect there will be lots of visits to that site to take a look at the translations.
I will take a look as soon as you go to the next person to interview. If anyone has any more questions, I am open here.
Okay, yeah, and people can put them in the chat as we go, and if we've got some time, we'll come back to them at the end, or you can answer them in the chat.
Okay.
All right, Andrew.
Okay. So I'll start with how I got into tabletop RPGs. Um, my dad was a war gamer from way before D&D was a thing, and then when D&D came around, he jumped to that, and when my brother and I were born, he decided he wanted to make us D&D geeks. And I think my mom told him that we weren't allowed to play D&D until we were 10. That's not what happened. We started playing at 5.
I was
Only we
gonna
didn't
say
play D&D. We didn't start with D&D. We started with Rollmaster. So technically speaking, um but Rollmaster it was a good thing because Rollmaster was my it was my escape it was my geeky escape in elementary school. It was how I got through the bullying, how I got through the harassment.
I'm always
Um
excited to find someone that didn't start with D&D. Like that's a
yeah,
rarity. I know, and
it's
there's two of them in the same group.
yeah,
Poet
it's
Cool Andrew. There's something
but
there.
yeah, it's the Andrew thing. But my dad did not like second edition, is what I'm told. And
Weirdo.
yeah, and he either that or he couldn't get his hands on books, or his books got destroyed and he didn't want to get new books. I don't remember what the whole story was. But we started with Rollmaster when those books wore out. Luckily, 3.0 had just come out, and I started playing on my own at that point. I was GMing in Rollmaster before then, so I was GMing after, I think, 5 years. Well, no, I don't know. I may have been GMing before 3.0, but I was I started GMing when I was 10 years old, right around then. That's what I tell people. I'm not really exactly sure. I'm 36. I don't remember that far back. Um, so I've been in the hobby for quite a while, and then when I was in 6th grade, I got into tabletop RPG development because a math project. I was told, create a game that has math in it. That was the extent of the project guidelines. And my first thought was, I'm making a tabletop role playing game. And my dad's like, no, you're not. And that just made me make it.
Don't
Um,
tell me what I can't do.
it wasn't like, yeah. um, he wasn't telling me not to do it, more as he was telling me I wouldn't be able to, and that I would never complete it, and I would never publish it. All of those things happened. Um, that was probably 4 titles ago. It ended up being, hold on, let me move these miniatures that I put on it. Um, and ugh, do not want to drop this mug that we sell. Speaking of mugs that people can sell, oh, upside down. It ended up being this.
Your
Um,
hand is over the title. Can you
oh, excuse me.
There you go.
Trail of Heroes, specifically Standard Edition.
It's a nice looking cover.
Um, it yeah, that cover was the most expensive piece of art that I have in the book. Everything else is cheap, but
Covers tend to be
it's
that way.
good.
Covers tend to be that way.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I got a beginning artist, so it was cheaper than it probably should have been. But
Can we see some of the art on the inside?
absolutely, you can definitely see some of the art on the inside. Let's see. Do 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 do. This is. Let's see if I can get it. There we go.
Can we zoom?
Zoom a little bit.
Computer enhance.
I know. Wouldn't that be nice if that were an actual thing?
If I zoom in too much, I can't
Yeah, it
see
gets
what I'm
yeah,
showing.
yeah, it gets
Um,
too hard to see, but
yeah, well, I can't see what I'm showing because it's covering my face. Um, but we've also got some color art in there somewhere. Um, it's in there. It's just hard to find because it was more expensive.
mhm.
And I did this all myself,
Mhm.
except for the art. Um, I do have a business partner, but he came in technically after the book was published, or after the original copy was published. This book itself just got published last year.
It's available on
Um,
our Drive Through RPG, right? I think I've seen it
yes, it
a
is
few
on
days.
Drive Through RPG, and if people could buy it there, that'd be wonderful because they have a $50 limit of you have to make $50 to actually make the money, and I have not made that limit yet.
Ugh, that seems like a bummer.
Um, I would
seems very
honestly prefer
frustrating.
you buy it there than on my Ko-fi website.
Just so that the pot is open to you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've had a lot
um
of discussions when I've been talking to, a lot of creators through this project, and Drive Through RPG really seems to be kind of a mixed bag for creators. I mean,
yeah.
a lot of people use it, so you get, you have the chance. It's like the Amazon for the role playing world.
Yeah. I do have it on Amazon as well.
Hmm.
That's where I got this book.
Does
Uh
Amazon do print on demand?
yes. Um if you can find it on Barnes and Noble, do not buy it. I
Really?
thought I took it off there. I've been told it's on there. I'm trying to take it off again. This is a terrible print, Barnes and Noble. Not only did you cut parts off, you left off pages. The pictures are in the wrong place.
Oh my.
Everything's wrong. And it
Bizarre.
was the same on both copies. So do not get it from Barnes and Noble if you find it there. Get it somewhere else. Uh, our Patreon only has the digital version, by the way, the PDF, because they only have a digital store
Hmm.
on Patreon. If you want to, I will send you the link to our Ko-fi later. If you want to get one of our 2 physical copies that we have in stock, we do not sell from us on demand. We print on demand because Amazon is hit or miss with their printing. And we like to have the prints go out as soon as possible. When we sold print on demand with Amazon, one time someone had to wait 4 months for their print because it kept coming in terrible. Um,
I have a great loathing for all things Amazon, so.
yeah. Buy from us. We have it'll be cheaper. We make more money, and it'll come faster,
Hmm.
better
And how
because
has the
we
print
we only keep the good ones.
how has the print been for the drive-through
Drive
orders?
Through RPG, we do not have print copies yet
They're just
because
PDF.
they
Okay.
require Adobe format. And I did it on Word and then put it through PDF,
Ah,
and that will
okay.
not work for them. So I am working with someone else to get it on Drive Through RPG print copy, but it is not there yet. One thing we do have, other than those, miniatures, and we do custom orders, as in custom designs. In fact, this one right here, oh, I'm covering her head. This one right here was a custom design for someone in one of my campaigns. Um, here's another one that terrible. Here's another one that we have. Little dwarf wizard casting a spell. I think this one's my favorite though. I named him Charles. I don't know why. He just looks like Charles to me.
Definitely a Charles.
Um, and we have these mugs. Most of these things we're hoping to sell at the Richmond Open. We will be at the Richmond Open April 2nd through, no, wait, is it April or May? I think it's May 2nd through 4th. Um, but the Richmond Open tabletop RPG Open 2025. If you look that up, you'll find us, or you'll find it, the date, and we will be there and have a booth there, and we have quite a bit of things to sell. I do not have all of them with me because it was just too many things to have with me.
There are a
Um,
number of people here that are not familiar with the geography. Could you tell people where that is?
okay, so that's Richmond is the capital of Virginia. It's on the east coast of the U.S. Um, and the Richmond Open is in Glen Allen, I think, which I don't know where that is in Virginia. I know it's near where I am. That's all I know. I'm sorry. I don't drive around much. I don't travel much, so I can't tell you more than that.
That's fine. I just thought a general idea for the many people in the chat this time that are not even
Um,
from the US.
yeah, that's fair. Um, but we have not listed all of our physical products on our store yet. Our store is in limbo because we're trying to find the best store that we can get. Um, I'm trying to get my Square store to work correctly, but I can't figure that out exactly. So that's hopefully the future of it because we do have a Square connector thing for our phone for my phone so that I can take card readings at conventions.
Those things can be a nightmare, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. I was like,
But you know, it works and it's what we can get.
My mother also owns a small business, and she has one of those. And sometimes it works great, and sometimes it does not.
Yeah, but the first one's free and the second one costs like $4 or something like that. That's a go for us when we get a fifty
Absolutely.
dollar a month
Oh
budget
yeah,
around.
in the grand scheme of things, they are definitely worth it. But you get
Um,
someplace where the internet's spotty, you never know.
yeah, that's a problem, and they do warn you about that on the website. We
yeah, yeah,
are
especially
also
at conventions. I
Yeah, we
was
are
at
also
SM.
going to be at Midway Game Fest, or at least we're going to have products there, hopefully.
So tell us a little bit about character design and world
Oh
building,
yes,
and
character design. So Trail of Heroes is a should I talk about standard edition or basic edition first? Basic edition is out, it's just not done.
talk about the one that's done, I guess.
Okay, so standard edition is a moderately crunchy tabletop RPG. And by that, I mean it's pretty complicated. It's not like super complicated like Rollmaster was, although some of parts of it are inspired by Rollmaster slightly, like the D percentile system. Um, it um and the initiative system was inspired by Rollmaster. It uses speed as your initiative. Always and forever, your speed will be your initiative. Um,
I like that.
but the character creation process is a point buy system with no strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, charisma, all that stuff. That I threw by the wayside. I say, you know what? That's not used really. Why do we have that when we can just grab the um attack number, the ranged accuracy number, the casting accuracy number, the damage for those three is separate, but it's there. And you pay points for each of those stats. And at first level customization, which is the character creation, um, you get most people, I believe, get 5 points first level customization. But archers will get 10 points, 5 to spend in standard, 5 to spend in special, which is like skills in D&D terms. So it'd be like the thief skills, really. Like hide and move silent and stuff like that. Archers are the thieves. However, they don't have to be. They can choose on a level by level basis whether they want to go heavy in standard abilities or thieving abilities. It's just that first level they have to be equal. And the reasoning was that way you have time to figure out which one you want. The other reasoning was I didn't want to give you 15 points to spend at first level when everyone else gets 5. Um, there's several classes. Let me list the classes because I've got that document. I had that document up. Oh, here it is. Classes are. Oh, I'm stuck in the monster manual. The monster manual pops up first in the book because I originally had it in the back, but then I realized that the art needed to be more spread out. So visually, it looks better with the monster manual in the front. And that's my little secret of how I made it look good. Uh, Here we go. So there's all hands, which are the bards without music. And by that, I mean they're the jack of all trades, master of none. But they don't have music because I thought at the time of creating them that that was a little silly. I have since come around to the idea of bards, and I have added them in a extra rule book that will be available for purchase as soon as I make it look better. And I don't know what's going on with my page right now, but my computer's acting a little funny. So I may drop out in a second. Um my graphics are acting a little funny. I don't know if that's going to be a indication that my internet is not happy. Um
I
then
haven't
there's
seen
the archers.
I haven't seen any sound or visual issues on this end, but
No, no, everything
Awesome.
seems to be working fine.
yeah.
Awesome. Then there's the archers, which I've already gone over. Druids are pretty standard druids, except they don't really have a shape changing ability unless they choose a specialization class that allows it, or unless they choose spells that allow it. Um, because as you level up, you just get more points to spend. You don't get special abilities. The special abilities come from specialization classes if you choose to multi-class into them. Otherwise, there's no multi-classing, which is
So
something I plan to add, by the way.
somebody asked, do you have point pools to use those abilities you have chosen?
Point pools to use the abilities that you've chosen. I am not sure what that means.
Well, Horseman,
Um,
if you
Well, you
can
mentioned that you have like 5 points, and you put these 5 points into different things. So I think the question is, and I'm just trying to interpret it. The question would be, for different things, do you have different pools of 5 points, or is it 5 points for everything?
okay, so the way it works is um 1 point, like say 1 point in attack gives you 2 attack with a maximum of 6 attack that you can add each level. 1 point in health gives you 10 health with the maximum of 20 or 30 health. I'm not sure. But there's a different amount that you get from each stat, and then there's a maximum that you can get in that stat at each level. So you can't just like put all your points into health and just get like 100 health in one go and just never go up in anything else. Although what you do generally do is there's 3, possibly 4, depending on the class that you have, different defensive stats. There's armor, there's defense. Armor is damage reduction, defense is AC, to put it into D&D terms. Um, and then there's health, obviously. You need health, unless you're doing that other game where you just lose items. that I've forgotten the name of already. I'm sorry. um, but and then there and that didn't occur to me. Um,
Crown and
and
skull, I think is what you meant.
yeah, crown and skull. It didn't occur to me to do that. I was like, oh, you need health, obviously. But the and then the last one is dodge. Dodge is a percent chance that a hit will be a miss unless it's a vital hit. And then it gets a little bit more complicated because, of course, I had to make it more complicated.
I was gonna say
But
you were not kidding about this being crunchy.
it actually works out a lot more smoothly than it sounds. Character creation is the worst part, is the crunchiest part, which is why Basic focused on smoothing out character creation. Um, I got rid of I got rid of some stats in Basic. I simplified some stats in Basic. I got rid of a bunch of characteristics like alignment, deities. I changed races to body types. I changed classes to adventuring styles. I did a lot of things in Basic that just simplified everything. It's like 5 clicks and you're done with your character. If you do it digitally. Yes, a good visit to the chiropractor. Crunchy is good. I love Crunchy. Advanced Trail of Heroes Advanced was way crunchier than I could handle. It is stalled out, which is why I have not published it. I think there were 180 classes that you could take, and multi-classing was a thing. Only there were 180 subclasses within the like 14 classes total, and you could only multi-class within your main class. But anyway, I'm jumping back and forth between things.
That's okay. I think it's helping give us a better idea of how things work and how they're going to.
Um, but yeah, back to the characters that you can get in standard. Then there's the fighter, which is the most basic of all classes. You're just there for hack and slash. You can do a little bit of archery eventually. You can dodge eventually, but honestly, it's really not what you're meant to do. You obviously can build a fighter that does that, but it's not what it was built to. And then the mage is the most versatile of everything because the spells are where it really gets crunchy. I won't even go into how the spells get crunchy that much. Um,
Give
because
us
it
an
gets
outline.
too crunchy.
A bit,
Uh,
just a bit.
yeah, just a little bit. Basically, you spend when you spend points in spells to level up the spells because you get different levels of spells, but then you get to level up your spells as well by spending
Sorry,
damage
sorry to
points
cut
in
you
them.
off. Just a question. Is the spell casting system like something similar to D&D in terms of like you have events in magic, spell slots, that sort of stuff, roll to cast, or something completely different?
It's basically I modeled it after the sorcerer in 3.5 D&D. So you have this many spell slots of each level, and you get to cast that many spell slots of whatever spell you learned of that level. Um, Basic, it gets weird. Gets even more complicated in Basic with the spells, so I won't go into that at all. Um, Especially since I'm changing that right now. Uh, but the standard, it when you go up in damage in a spell, it will do a specified thing for that spell, depending on that spell. Most of them, it will add damage, but if it's like a summon based spell or a buffing based spell, it can't add to damage. What is it going to do? Well, for a buffer based spell, you get to spend points in how you want to add to the buffs, or add to the subtractions that the buffer based spell does, because a curse is also considered a buffer based spell. Um, a summon based spell, you spend points in leveling up whatever you're summoning. And so it's very different in those aspects. Um, I've had a fire bolt, which is a first level spell that you get at first level, do 76d6. And my fireball, which is a third level spell that you get at 8th level, because I do different amounts of levels to go up levels in spells, because there's only 5 levels of spells. And I wanted to spread it out a bit. So the fireball was doing like, now remember, this is a D percentile system, so these the health is higher, the everything's higher. I found that makes it easier to balance, actually, because you got a larger range of what you can change. But the fireball was doing like 12 or 14 d20 versus the 76 d6. So the fireball was doing more damage to one target, but the fireball was doing more damage altogether. And I had just broken my character, because I was manipulating the system because I wanted to see where the system had failed. This was a playtest, so I made a fire mage that was able to cast firebolt at will. That's 76d6 at will. And I was loving it.
I think
Now,
someone from this chat would
You want
also love
you
it.
want I was gonna say, you want to talk about breaking the system? Holy cow!
that's not even the worst thing I've had happen. Um, there was one person, and I changed the rules on this, so this doesn't happen anymore. But one person just spent money on range bonus. Not range duh, as in ranged accuracy, but range as in they could throw the throwing daggers further.
Hmm.
And since throwing daggers are cheap because they're a stack, so you got to buy more of them, so they're cheaper. He just added, I think it was 200 feet to the range of his throwing daggers. And he just stood outside the combat, outside of the visibility of the monsters, and just started throwing daggers at them at a rate of
See,
2 per round.
this is where I think even as a fairly flexible DM, I would just be like, let's talk about that.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, things need to change here. So I
Good
changed the
good
rules a bit.
playtesting though. Good playtesting though.
Yeah. I think that campaign didn't last long, not because of hard feelings or anything, just because people moved away.
Mhm.
And this was before virtual playing was really that big of a thing. Because remember, this game has been in development for over 20 years. So it that was a fun little break in the system that I was like, okay.
Let's not do that.
Yeah. The
Is there an
7066 Firebolt was doable. You could balance that.
Is there
And
I mean, at that point, are you doing the average? Because the bell would be pretty, I think, like
the
just
bell
on
is
center.
pretty big, but the difference is pretty big. But as you pointed out, as you might be pointing out, I'm not sure if this is what you're saying, but yeah, pretty much you do end up doing average every time, because the more dice you roll, the more often you're going to do average.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Um, and I didn't just average it because I love rolling dice, and I have 1,000 dice literally. I have more than that now because I bought more, but at the time I had 1,000 dice. I counted, um, and I had the d6s to do that. In fact, I had the red and orange and yellow d6s to do that because it was important that they were the right color.
I'm beginning to
Of
Um,
course.
understand why you developed such a crunchy game. I
yes.
have all these dice and I have nothing to do with them.
No, it was more of I wanted it to be
Yeah, I like Chris's idea.
it was more of I wanted it to be more customizable. So I kept adding things to the rules that would customize it. And then it got more complicated because the more things you add to the rules, the more complicated it gets. At least if you're me and your mind works
See,
complicated.
interestingly, the game that I am presenting tonight is Shadow of the Demon Lord, which is totally customizable and much less crunchy.
That's what the goal was with basic. And I think I achieved it. So I will talk about basic a little bit now.
We are,
Basic.
just so you know, we are at the 8 o'clock point, which is normally where we stop. So
Okay.
if anybody needs to head from the chat, I just want to take a second to say thank you for being here. I didn't get to go last week either, and I brought this game specifically because Barlow Keep was going to be here, so I'm going to keep this running for as long as anybody can stay. So, have it.
Um. So I will be quick about basic because time. But basic is basically you do what you want. Since there's no races, but races exist in the game, you can just be whatever race you want, and it just doesn't do anything to your character unless the DM says, "Okay, you're a giant. You at least have to take up a 10-foot square." Um, or you have a small minus to your defense. I'm sorry, you're a giant. Um, but that was the idea, is that you can do anything you want, you can be anything you want. There's multi-classing in basic because all it was you pick a new adventuring style and it adds the bonuses to that. And since your adventuring style adds set bonuses, and there's any number of adventuring styles to choose from, you get to choose whatever bonus combination you want still, but it's still a quick and easy add-in, especially if you have a um an automatic character sheet, which we have. It's just down because Google Sheets decided to break one of our not macros, but one of our formulas. Uh so hopefully it's fixed by now. I haven't checked in a while. But
I got in
the
a big debate the other day with someone over the need for fillable character sheets, so I appreciate this.
but it's basically, all of its drop down menus Our character sheets are all drop down menus and check boxes, and that's it. That's the goal. Basic is not quite there yet because I have to do some spells work, and because the formula is broken, which breaks the whole sheet completely. But it's absolutely beautiful in its simplicity, and you can just do whatever you want. You don't even have equipment, so you can say, I want to use a maul, but I'm doing damage like a dagger. I'm just hitting people lightly.
Non-lethally. Or barely
uh,
lethally. Barely lethally.
yeah. So it's like you could have a wizard with a big old maul or halberd or spear or whatever you want him to have. And because there's no equipment, there's no constraint on what the equipment I have provided in the rules are. If you're running for something from a different nationality or cultural background that I'm not familiar with, which doesn't happen a lot because I studied a lot of that stuff. Um, I studied history in college, specifically mythological history, and that ancient mythological history, and that ended up having a lot of weapons stuff in it. But the the if you do find a weapon that I'm not familiar with, it doesn't matter because I didn't include any weapons. You're welcome to make it do whatever you want. It does whatever your character does.
I think Dungeon Crawl Classics does something like, you start with, like, you start as a farmer and the damage counts as spear damage. So I mean, it's still based on the weapon, but basically all of the different types of weapons just kind of get categorized into
Yeah, and in standard, I
clusters.
did something similar to that. I don't know how many people here have played Diablo 2, where you had a mercenary that had no equipment to start with, yet they could still use their weapons.
So I haven't played
And
it per
and
se, but my one of my fondest memories from when I was a child was watching my father play Diablo.
yeah, and Diablo 2, where you had that mercenary that had no weapons but could use a weapon, that's how in standard you start, technically. You get a little bit of gold. I think it's like 65 gold per character or something like that, which is not much in my system. So you get to buy a couple of pieces of equipment. Generally, it's advised that it be armor, um, of some sort, or a shield of some sort. Maybe spend a little bit of 10 gold on a weapon or something. But you're not going to get the equipment you want. And if you do get the equipment you want, you're not going to get all of it. You're honestly supposed to go out without missing some equipment. And yet you can function completely. You still get to block with a shield, even if you don't have a shield. I mean, there's no blocking mechanic, but that's what the defense is supposed to be part of. Um, and you still get to use your armor stat, even if you don't have armor. You still get to attack with a weapon if you don't have a weapon, because you're considered to have standard basic equipment that is monetarily worthless. So when you get new equipment, you just drop your old equipment or you keep it in case your new equipment is lost. And I think that's all I really needed to say, unless anyone's got a question.
Once again, Prophetic and I have similar mindsets. Everything is a weapon with the right motivation.
Yes. Improvised weapons have been added, actually.
All right.
I think
Does
they're in the character sheet. They're not in the actual rules yet. The character sheet has all the extended rules that have not been tested fully, which is really cool. And it will be free.
I mean, who doesn't love free?
Yeah.
Um, unlike video games these days, where the new versions go up for like $60, and then they just trust you to tell them what the bugs are, and they fix it.
No, I would rather buy a TTRPG book for that amount of money, honestly.
Yeah,
Honestly, I
exactly.
sympathize with that, but and honestly, I don't think that most gamers really know what they want because they'll say one thing and then people will change it and fix it and then they'll complain that it's not that way again. But and I've seen that many times. So I honestly sympathize with the game developers a lot more than I used to, especially as a game
Definitely,
developer.
definitely, definitely. I think software, like if it's not games, just software in general, should be able to be constantly updated and fixed and worked on.
Yeah.
Games should be a thing that you buy, you have on your computer, and that's the end of it. Because it's an art form. Of course, if you have an online game that requires maintenance, that makes sense. Of course, you're gonna update it. But if you make like a little thing, you made like a thing that has its story, it has its bugs, it has its personality, it should be left to live in that form, in my opinion. Like if you want to make
Yeah.
something better, you make another thing. You don't shape shift the game, because what is that
And but
game
then
then?
you're getting into the next version of the game and a million versions of the game also anger the same people.
Then we're
You know,
then we're
there's
getting into an entirely different conversation, which would be
Definitely.
fascinating on another stream. But uh,
I'm sorry.
a couple of people here are starting to look real tired. So
Who, me?
yeah, you.
I'm running on alcohol and coffee. You know what they say in
I
Dire
thought you
Straits
were going to
song?
say
If
something
you
other than coffee for a second.
No, 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 it's coffee. It's not Coke. It's Christmas themed coffee. Thank you very much, and very strong Serbian alcoholic beverage. You know what they say in Dire Straits song? If you want to run cool, you gotta run on heavy fuel. That's the line.
So what's the drink?
It's Serbian brandy. It's called rakia. Yeah, this one is like the store bought one, which is like yucky. Usually the homemade ones are like perfect. And yeah, what vodka is to Russians, it's to us. You know,
Um, I think brandy. The one time I drank brandy was also the only time I've ever been sick.
I don't know if it's called brandy in English. To be honest,
Oh,
it's
okay.
because I would say it has more in common with like vodka. I'm bad with like I don't know stuff about alcoholic beverages. Um, just started drinking rakia a couple of years ago. Before that, it was disgusting, but then it's an acquired taste,
Many of
like
the
all
things
good
I
things.
many of the things I drink are an acquired taste. So
Absolutely.
okay, any questions from the chat for Andrew? Otherwise, I'm gonna move into Shadow of the Demon Lord since Barlow Keep loves his horror games. I thought I would. I thought I would bring this one up. I was gonna just forward Numenera from last week because I didn't get to do last week, but I decided this was more appropriate.
I can do Numenera as well.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I heard about it a lot, but I haven't played it. But I've also heard a lot of good stuff about Shadow of the Demon Lord.
I wasn't sure if you'd be familiar with this, so I was sort of laughing when you were talking about the number of different classes and stuff. Shadow of the Demon Lord, I'm trying to remember the exact number, but Shadow of the Demon Lord, by the time you hit level 7, there is a potential 4,000 different paths um, that you can, or path combos that you can actually put together for characters.
How big is the
Um,
book again?
Uh, not very. It's, I don't know, 100 pages maybe? 150 pages? Um, so Shadow the Demon Lord also has one of the easiest character creations ever because you start at level 0. You do not have a class at all. Your background is entirely rolled randomly because the basis is if, you don't get to pick where your family comes from or what race you are or anything like that. So it's just random rolls. You can then do a little bit of like tweaking how you want those rolls. You can do a little bit of tweaking with your professions. This is an extremely role play heavy game. Um, you gain most of the things you gain entirely through your role play, not necessarily through killing things or through solving problems, even. And you gain your abilities through how well you role play. So, for instance, if you start off with a background that says that you were a farmer and you are able to incorporate that into what it is you're doing. So, I was a farmer. I know what um, healthy crops look like. I know what healthy dirt looks like. I can tell this land has been poisoned because I'm used to being in the dirt. I'm used to dealing with predators that try and get after my chickens. I know what this footprint looks like. The more you can do that, the more you can get away with, and the more you can develop. Which is one of the things I really like. I like very role heavy play games. I like combat as well. But sometimes I will intentionally throw things that are obviously too hard at players just to see if they're smart enough to walk away. Because you know a lot about a group if, at level 0, you put a dragon in front of them and they go, I poke it with a stick. So you run them through a short adventures. There is no session 0. What you do is you literally run them through an adventure. Like a one shot, very quick, sometimes 2 shots if you have a slow party. And you put a number of obstacles in their way, and how they react to that obstacle gets them points in different categories. So you start out with a warrior or fighter category, a power category, which is, I think, in some editions also called the wizard category, but it doesn't actually necessarily lead to magic using. So alchemists also fall
Hmm.
under that category. You have the helping or cleric category, and then you have the rogue or thief category. But again, those are flexible depending on where you decide to go with them. So if you have a knife and you put a knife in front of them, and one of the party picks it up and they attack whoever kidnapped them, then they get a point in the fighting category. If they pick it up and they use it to cut their bonds behind their back, then they get a point in like rogue and sneakiness. If they use the knife to cut up a piece of cloth and bandage someone else's wound, then they get a point in the cleric or helping category. Things like that. So how you react to a situation determines what your class ends up being at the end of that game. So you don't specifically get to pick your class, but the way you react
The
to a
class
situation.
picks you.
Yeah, pretty much. Pretty much. Um,
That's
but
pretty cool.
it is. And you'll occasionally find people that, they think they want to react to a situation a certain way, but then instinctively they really react to it a different way. But it continues because so for your first 3 levels, like 1 through 3, you are that class. There's nothing you can do about it. But let's say you were a thief, you ended up as a thief, but what you really wanted to do was do magic. You can, as you advance, take different paths which will allow you to be a thief that specializes in the stealing of magical items. which means you have to know how to handle and use magic items in order to be able to and identify, for that matter, in order to get those magic items. You became a wizard, but what you really wanted to do was be a fighter. What you can do is specialize in being the wizards that make magic swords. You became a fighter, but really wanted to be a helper. So interesting. One of my favorite parts about this game is the paladin class is not a fighter subclass. It is a specialization in the cleric class. So somebody has a lot of background noise. Oh, there we go. Have a good night, Chris. So you can expand these different categories in different ways to allow you to really, and it's not like if you're a cleric, you can only take a cleric subclass. If you can figure out a way to justify it, you can actually take any of the master paths. That's what they're called them. You can take, it's expert and then master, sorry. You can take any of the expert classes. There are suggested ones for fighters or clerics or whatever, but they aren't requirements. So you could, but you have to have a reason for it. That's where the role play comes in. You have to have a reason for justifying why you were a rogue and now you want to be able to do martial arts. You can, by the end of it, there are so many masterclass paths. I can't even describe them all. I mean, there are gunslingers, there are martial artists, there are battle wizards.
And by combining them, that's how you get those hundreds and thousands of options that you mentioned.
Yeah, that's why, because any of those 4 can end up with any of the master classes. So, like in D&D, you have a whole bunch of options to start with, but once you've picked your class, you're kind of pigeonholed in. Either that or you get less effective. There are really only certain combinations that work really well together. I mean, there are entire sites that are dedicated to which specializations you should not take in which class because they're no good. This game instead starts you off with very few choices and then just balloons outwards. I mean, there's 20 something options in the second step, and then I don't even remember how many there are in the master classes. Which makes sense. I mean, if you're going to college, you go to college for history, and then when you do your master's degree, you pick which part of history, and then you take your doctorate degree and you pick, weaponry in ancient Rome during these years. So you have more choices that are more specialized. The basis for Shadow of the Demon Lord as a setting is a little bit like if D&D and Call of Cthulhu had a baby. It is a post-apocalyptic fantasy world in which one of the main demons of hell has broken through onto Earth, and his shadow has fallen over the Earth. But on his side of the rift, time moves much slower. So to him, he's moving at perfectly normal rate to step out onto the world. But to us, it's been 100 years. And all we can see is his shadow, which has destroyed, it's messed up the sun. In some places, it's too bright. In some places, it's blocked completely. Half the world is now desert. And the minute he steps through that rift, he enters our time and the world ends instantaneously. And everyone knows that. There is no stopping it. There is no oh, your final goal is to try and seal the rift and stuff. No, the world will end. But we don't know if it's going to be tomorrow or if it's going to be 10,000 years from now because we don't know what the time difference is. And so everyone has to just keep on going in this world that keeps getting increasingly terrible, uh, not knowing if tomorrow everything's just gone. So the atmosphere is pretty bleak. There is a ton of like racial tensions. There are tensions between kingdoms. Um, there is a lot of like there's an entire group of mages that specialize in trying to capture souls and put them in metal bodies as a way to try and cheat death. Um, so there's all this sort of franticness that goes on. There are the old gods, which are kind of natural gods, and there is the new single god, which is like all of the worst periods of Christianity and the Spanish Inquisition cranked up to like 11. Um, there are the agnostics, though aren't very many of them because it's hard to do when literal hell is getting ready to step through onto your planet. So it's pretty grim. The art in these books, not all these pictures are great, but I know people that don't even game who have like bought the books just because they really like the art. And unfortunately, oops, oh, that one didn't work very well. Um, Unfortunately, some of the best art is on the insides of the books, and you can't find those. Like people haven't scanned those online, um, but the art is, yeah, exactly. Eat, drink, be merry, for tomorrow we meet Cthulhu. So yeah, even the art is kind of grim. Interestingly, despite the fact that, it's Shadow of the Demon Lord, there are not necessarily very many demons. There are a lot of um, things that are slipping through rifts that are monsters. There are a lot of natural monsters and mutations that have been created from all these changes. But, when the big bad is getting ready to step through, none of the other demons really want to be there either. So, unless they've specifically been summoned, not a lot of actual demons that you're going to run into. Um, yeah, it is, there's a little bit of a Warhammer 40K fantasy feel to it, but honestly, in some ways, I find it, despite the fact that the world is going to end, in some ways, I find it less bleak than Warhammer Fantasy, which is saying something. Um, it is a game that's very heavy on maybe not combat, but conflict. But it's also a very deadly world, and so finding other ways or tricky ways to deal with conflicts is sometimes really necessary. Um, the first time I ever ran this game, I ran a pre-planned adventure. Now, even the pre-planned adventures are not like Lego sets where all you can do is one thing. Like they really are training in like how to help players figure out creative ways to solve problems. So the book was set up that the players have been captured by slave owners, and they have 4 days before they cross the mountains and they are brought into the city. And if they haven't escaped by then the game is over because they've now become slaves and they're in the city and there's no escape. But currently, they're still in an area where slavery is illegal. They haven't been branded. They're not. They're on their way to being slaves. Um, so what it did was it had suggestions. Here are tools to give them. They're slaves, so they don't have anything, but here are some tools to give them. Here are some possible ways they might solve the problem. Because there is, in Shadow of the Demon Lord, there is no, this is how you fix the problem. It's not like a video game where you have to find the specific button. It really is, here's the problem, here's what you like have to solve the problem, do whatever. Um, and they really struggled for the first half of the game. And finally, I said, okay, we're going to take a break. What is it about this that isn't working? And they're like, well, we need more clues as to what the solution is. And I was like, well, there's your problem. Like, there is no specific solution. Just figure it out. And they went, oh, well, that makes more sense then. um, so understand that none of the suggested solutions involve being able to kill off all the slavers. They involve tricking the slavers. They involved assassinating one or two guards. They involved escape. Um, so instead, they had a changeling, and the changeling changed into something much smaller, slipped their chains, rifled through the guards' supplies, discovered that they had a couple of black powder pistols, stole the gunpowder for the pistols. The group got together and like made makeshift bombs out of it, and they threw it into the middle of the fire while everyone was drinking and carousing, and scored natural 20s.
Wait. So they had a changeling, and they were like, "We need more clues. We don't know how to escape from here." I mean, this person can shapeshift
No,
into
no.
anything, and
Uh,
like,
but they didn't know that. Changelings are extremely not even looked down on. Like, they're hated. People hate changelings. So a changeling would not normally just volunteer the information that they are a changeling, and they were all strangers together.
uh-huh, makes sense, makes sense.
Um,
But if you can save people from slavery, I don't know.
well,
I think,
so and actually, the person who was the changeling never did tell them that they were a changeling. Their
uh,
changeling, their humanoid form was of a child, and so they just told them, "Oh yeah, I managed to like slip things a little bit. Um, I managed to loosen things up a little bit," and so they slipped loose. There was absolutely nothing that suggested that they were actually a changeling. So, um, I do believe the dragon needs to head. So I want to thank you very much, for your time and for sharing your information with us.
I thank you. I sorry for having to cut short.
That's okay. We
Oh,
ran over. So
yeah. So until possible next time.
okay. Have a great night.
You too.
Um, So yeah, Shadow of the Demon Lord is really interesting. It's very flexible for both the game masters and the players. It really encourages, that you were talking about that playing fast and loose as things go. It actively encourages that.
I
Um,
mean, but for horror and for generally games like that, I think that works better. I've really I've started running those types of games through Call of Cthulhu and like those Cthulhu Eternal, which is where it's what Delta Green is based on.
mhm.
And I really liked that one. Then I started hacking it to make it even more like that. Now I ended up with a completely different game. Uh, we are running those types of games in our like collaboratively made system, but for me the number one necessity is not to be too involved in paperwork while running horror, because horror, every
Yeah,
time you like your gaze goes somewhere else, you're risking losing atmosphere that is sometimes painfully hard to build
yeah,
in this day
absolutely.
and age. So I totally get it. I think this is right up my alley, because when I'm done with this campaign, and I'm kind of fed up with modern horror, so I'm really looking forward to going into fantasy again. And maybe this is the transition I need. A lot of people said, "Dude, go play Shadow of the Demon Lord. It's a thing for you." I have to find that book. I mean, I have the PDF. I've never read it, but I have it.
Hmm.
Um, I would really like to find the physical book. That would make it just so much better for me.
Yeah, I have a physical copy of the main book, but most of what I got were PDFs because that was just what was available. Um, The other
I
thing
first I
is,
have to find a smuggler because I can't order anything online to Serbia.
yeah,
So that's
the
not that we can't, but customs can be a bit expensive. Sometimes
yeah,
unreasonably expensive. Like it doesn't
yeah.
add up.
I tried to order a book from the UK that couldn't be got in America, and the shipping was worse than the cost of the book. So I feel you.
Yeah,
Um, the I lost what I was gonna say.
PDFs.
Something about PDFs are convenient in that they're really easy to search if you need information quickly. And like you said, when you're trying to build atmosphere, that those moments can really make a difference. So I like the fact that if somebody hits on something that I don't know the answer to right away, I can search quickly. The other thing is it's hard to find players for because a lot of people are not familiar with it. And it is the easiest game to run online I've ever found. Um,
Yeah, I'll continue avoiding to run games online as long as I can.
I I am normally not a fan. Um, I do occasionally, so my brother lives on the other side of the country. And so the only way I can really interact with him is to play games with him online. But Shadow of the Demon Lord is so easy to run online that I a lot of the objections I have about running online just kind of have faded away, at least for this. Um, Numenera is also not bad because it's got a lot of that same fast and loose, same ease of character development type thing. But Shadow of the Demon Lord is definitely better. Um, like I would never ever do. I mean, I don't.
Numenera has very interesting world building for sure. I've looked around. I've looked at some art as well. I think it would be
Yeah,
interesting.
the Numenera art is also amazing. Yeah, Numenera is interesting because it's such a weird blend of sci-fi and fantasy, and you can kind of pick depending on where you are in the world as to how much sci-fi you want integrated into your fantasy. Um, I think a lot of the later supplements really hit the sci-fi stuff really hard, um, which kind of made me sad, honestly. I really liked I really liked the more fantasy stuff, but anyway, um, yeah, it's a great system. I really wish that I could play more of it in person, but as it is the one game I run a month, so not only do not a lot of people not know about various systems, but I come from a state where everything is really spread out, and some of my players already drive 2 hours in order to come to my games once a month. So um
Yeah,
yeah,
there is a comment about the yeah. There it is. Yeah, this is something that I've noticed with me actually. When I run, there is a video I made where you can see that journal I have, and I would usually run fantasy games from that journal. I would try not to have tech around, but when I'm running, for example, this sci-fi-ish game set in 2055, I do bring laptops, TVs, everything. Like everything is in tech. So I think there's something to that. I enjoy having a real book for fantasy stuff. It's like there is a channel called Setting First, and uh, they have a video called TTRPG books are arcane artifacts. They really do think like
yeah.
a nice book
Sh-
has that artifact feel to it.
Yeah, Shadow of the Demon Lord is another case where you have to decide how much fantasy and how much horror you want to combine.
I've never
What
done horror in fantasy, honestly. I would try it out for sure.
I find it depends on my players. Some of my players are more fantasy oriented, and some are more
Hmm,
horror oriented. So,
definitely.
so what I do is my husband this year got me um a leather or leather esque game master screen that can put stuff in it, and I have a really flat, thin tablet, so it goes on the inside of the Game Master screen.
Oh, nice.
and then the sheets that I need go on the inside, the other two pages inside. So it I can have the search. I couldn't before. I had to pick one or the other, but now I can have the search feature and I can still have a somewhat fantasy looking. So I have my own magic item.
I've
Sure.
always preferred pen and paper. I've always preferred in person. Unfortunately, I'm forced to play more online than I am in person. So I'm adapting as best I can. All my all my in real life friends are moving to other time zones and you know way
Yeah.
out of reach of in real life games.
Yep.
So
Yeah, it's an issue.
I think
And
I've had. Sorry, go on.
no, no, go ahead.
I think I had the most luck one can have in like coming into the hobby, and like just starting with a very crunchy system and going over that, and later finding out that there are other systems and actually that people are so eager to play, and because there is no uh, like any preconceived knowledge here, because like people aren't playing D&D for like decades. Here, no one is playing D&D, so D&D is not that baseline that everyone comes from.
Yeah.
And then people are very open, and I think almost everyone, I think from around 20 people that actually want to play with me, about two of them have some experience running or playing TTRPGs. So there is this bubble of people that's like constantly growing, of people hearing there is something interesting happening in this friend group, let's try it out. And people are open to trying a lot of different stuff. So I can make a horror group for today, but I can make a fantasy group for tomorrow. And I thought this is how the world works. And then started talking to people online, and like I'm shocked that the majority of games are online, and I am just not used to it. I'm lucky that I can have a group every week. Someone can
Yeah.
play every week. What happened is that now with the YouTube channel and everything, I am not able to have any prep for a lot of these games. So a lot of that went into improv, and a completely new genre of playing, I would say, is improv. Just improvising stuff and having players jump in and fill in the gaps, like that line of how you should play them. We had one game where I got sick that morning, and like I had a small fever and I was not feeling very well. And in the middle of game, I said, I don't think I can run. Like, sorry guys. And like my friend volunteered and said, I will continue from here. Just take my character. We just swapped. The session was cool. It was very, very interesting. So
The
then,
I find that I always used to do books and I always used to do in person only. Part of the issue was that there was a while where my player groups were like 14 people, and it's very hard to keep track of 14 people and everything that's going on unless you have electronics and a lot of visuals. And I am not as smart as I or as fast as I used to be, so I have whittled those numbers down to much smaller groups. But the players I play with regularly are really smart, and they are constantly coming up with things I didn't think of, no matter how thoroughly I try and plan. So, for instance, I put players into a realm that was basically a dream world. So everything you thought of um, happened. One of the players like died for a couple of minutes because he's like, "Oh, so we have to be really careful about not thinking hard about, someone dying." Except, of course, the minute you say that, you've thought it, so he died. And it took him a little while to figure out how to get him back. Um, but they did. Um, but I thought there was a really obvious solution to getting out of this world, especially since they already had shown that they really like to jump off high places just to see if they'd hit bottom. Um, And they had gotten into this dream realm by going to sleep. So I thought the obvious solution was, they jump off something and, you have that startle reaction that wakes you up. No. One of my players summoned a fae and made a bargain with it. And I'm
Just make it
like,
orders of magnitude more difficult,
and I'm like,
complicated.
all right, I know there's a fae somewhere in one of my supplements, but I have no idea where it is because I was not I was not planning on that. Um,
That's why I have lots of pictures and lots of maps, and that's it.
Yeah, yeah,
uh,
definitely. I also have
well,
And
like,
then I just react to whatever the player does, and I just pull out statistics out of my head, and I'm like, okay, this is what you've got.
um, my longest running group is a drop in the affair. There are 16 players, but we never got any more than 6 at any session. I created a moving tavern akin to Seven Deadly Sins anime to explain the changes. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. What I do is my current main game, the players are all students at a school slash temple. And so everything they go out is just the students being sent out on missions in order to like learn new skills. And so whoever happens to be there is who gets sent out on the mission at any given time. And what I tell people is, I expect that this is going to be 5 sessions. You don't have to, promise you're going to be part of the whole campaign, but I do need you to like just be here for this section. And that hasn't been a problem. The weather here can be really erratic, so some people are like, I don't want to play in the wintertime because I don't want to drive. Or in my case, lambing season is in April. We probably will not have a game because I will be sleeping in the barn. Um, but if we do, literally, because normally right now we rotate between my house and the person that lives 2 hours south of me so that he doesn't have to drive every time. Um, and we're just going to have to do it at my house during lambing season because babies. And they all understand that there's a very good chance that the game could be cut short if there's a problem.
I
um,
once had a player join a campaign in the middle of a combat. We had a combat start, and it didn't end that session. So the player joined in the middle of the combat, popped out of a spider. He was like this gnome rogue that just cut his way out of a spider when the spider died. And then I had to figure out a way to get rid of him as he decided he didn't have it in his schedule anymore the very next session. And
yeah,
it was
I had that
still
happen.
in dungeon. I don't remember what I did.
another spider.
Oh, I would have just said that the venom from the spider was slow acting and that you just wake up one day and he's dead because the venom killed him.
I think he went back into the spider because he had some mage levels and just teleported somewhere. I'm not sure.
Anyway, any questions about Shadow of the Demon Lord or running it, or we've gotten a little off topic because we're all tired and starting to wander?
Oh, that's okay, I would say. Um, I mean, I have a ton of questions, but it's 3 a.m. here. I'm
Oh,
slowly
good
starting
heavens.
to shut down, and yeah, I would
3 a.m. is when I decide, oh, screw it. I'm just not going to sleep anymore.
no, I can't function like that.
Yeah, I was gonna say
I can
he's
I
dragging.
can always wake up earlier. Like I can get myself to function on low sleep if I wake up, but I cannot stay long. I don't know. I'm just not a night owl. I always wanted to be one because it's cool.
Yeah, I have come to the conclusion that being successful on YouTube depends on how little sleep you can get. And therefore, I will never be hugely successful because
No, I don't
I
think
require
you
6 hours
need.
anyway.
I don't think. I mean, I'm sleeping. Okay, but I'm not. a good example because I'm jobless at the moment. But I had a job like 8 months of having YouTube like in parallel, and I managed to still get some sleep, like 6 hours on average.
Yeah, there are I'm trying to think. There's a guy that I stream with on Sundays. I'm the co-host for his joke news show on Sunday evenings. Um and he goes from that show to another stream that runs until about 2 a.m. and then he gets up for work at 5. And then he works until, whatever normal working times are for him. And then he comes home and has supper and then gets on another live stream and is up until 2 a.m.
Well, but I think that's the streaming part of things, right? Because making just videos, it always struck me as three different things, like making videos, making shorts, or doing live streams. Like, I really see them as exercising different muscles, and like, you can't get in all of three at once without prior like experience. I would say that's why I avoid shorts. I'm making shorts, but that's just like to reach people, and those are just like my videos cut in the most like the fastest way I can do it. I'm not really like putting time into it. Streaming looks fun, actually talking to people, and like editing is certainly my biggest like hurdle to releasing at the moment.
When I
But
do
with
I
video,
editing,
I
I can
just
sleep.
don't edit.
I have had the same I have had the same video in the works for like 2 months now. Um because I keep changing my mind about the ending.
And I
I'm
mean,
doing
your videos are like they take much more editing than mine do.
I well, and this one is especially in depth because a lot of times I'll just use a bunch of, clips from whatever movie it is I'm looking at. And this one, I have to go through and have clips of like specifically what I'm talking about. And they can't be longer than 7 seconds or I get copyright struck. So I'm having to clip everything down into these tiny, tiny segments. So yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of an interesting thing. But anyway, now we are really off the mark. So thank you very much for the chat. To my panel, the outro is going to play, and then we'll be in the green room so that I can thank you for your time again. And I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.
Yeah, thanks for
Please,
having me.
yes,
Yeah,
thank you.
this has been
Please,
wonderful. Thank you.
please visit these lovely people's links. They will be in the description once I have everything edited and uploaded, which as late as it is might be tomorrow morning. But please come back and take a look at those if you haven't already grabbed them. And I hope we will see you next week.
Don't tell me what to do. I like that.
Meet me at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to gab with you. We'll talk about immersion, adventure heavy lows, characters and story, warlocks and barbarians and bards, comedy or horror. We got inspiration if you're in need of it or just need to hang out somewhere cozy. We're the guys for you, we've got time for you. Come and join the crew, here's what to do. Meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards. meet us at the tavern, have a drink or two. I'm the eclectic goat, and I'm here to play with you. We'll discuss the theory and the mechanics, how we ask for crits, Dungeons and Dragons and Wizards.